Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast. It's Wednesday, November 10th, and I'm Blair Kirchhoff. A good opening bid for Kansas basketball. The Jayhawks defeated Michigan State 87-74 at the Champions Classic at Madison Square Garden on Tuesday, and there was plenty for KU fans to like, starting with Ochai Agbaji. He was the best player on the floor, finishing with a career-best 29 points. He just looked so smooth and mature. Several freshmen played well, and preseason Big 12 Player of the Year Remy Martin scored 15 in his KU debut, all in the second half. Here to break down the game and what Bill Self and the players said afterwards are beat writers Jesse Newell and Gary Bedore. Let's get started. We're here with Gary Bedore and Jesse Newell, and a couple hours ago, Kansas put the finishing touches on Michigan State, 87-74 in the Champions Classic at Madison Square Garden. Big story tonight, of course, was Ochai Agbaji, and we're going to talk a lot about him. But there was a lot of other things to talk about from this game. I thought Kansas did so many things well. Gary, let's start with you. Break it down. What were your impressions of the Jayhawks tonight, and what did Bill Self had to say about this team?
I thought they played pretty well. They were a little bit sloppy. I don't know how all KU fans felt, but the lead was up to 16, and I didn't feel like that they necessarily were going to avoid a 8-point game or a 6-point game late. But I thought, like everybody, Ochai Agbaji played really well. 29 points, 3 threes, 8 of 8 from the line. A lot of the freshmen or the newcomers came in and did pretty well. As far as Self, he wasn't, giddy beyond belief. He was happy for Ochai, he said, a little puzzled at Remy Martin doing 0 shots the first half, but he did say he played well the second half. So he wasn't jumping for joy, Bill Self, but, he loves winning these high-profile games. That helps his program. And I don't know if he'd give it a C, B, or A, but he was happy to beat Tom Izzo because he respects how tough it is to score on Michigan State and to out-rebound.
Yeah, look, Michigan State was the only team against which Kansas had a losing record in the Champions Classic, oddly enough, and they tied up the series at 2 games apiece against the Spartans. And so I didn't realize, Gary, until I read your early game story that Kansas had lost its previous 2 openers. I guess I just don't. Just assume Kansas wins all the openers, but they'd lost their previous 2. They didn't play in the Champions Classic last year. There wasn't one, right?
Yeah, that confused me earlier in the week when I was looking that up because they played Gonzaga, but the Champions Classic wasn't the opener. And I didn't mean to say that KU out-rebounded Michigan State. They did lose the board battle 37-30, but I think KU was pretty gritty tonight. But, they did lose the board battle.
They did lose the board battle, and Bill Self mentioned that. But this was a small Kansas team that played tonight, Jesse, right? And you kind of had to concede that to Michigan State, always a great rebounding team under Tom Izzo. But the fact that Kansas won the turnover battle, Michigan State didn't shoot free throws well. There were reasons why Tom Izzo was not terribly pleased with his team's performance. But I don't know. Let's stick with Ochai for a minute or two here. Best game you've seen him play in a KU uniform?
Yeah, absolutely. He was phenomenal. And I think, Ochai is such a quiet kid. He's not a guy that shows a lot of emotion. I was videotaping him on the way to the tunnel where all the KU fans were kind of waiting for him, wanted to slap hands with him, wanted to kind of give him the final ovation. And he barely looked up. He kind of pointed at the last second, but it's just funny because we had just talked about Remy. Remy was just arms exalted when he ran off the tunnel, slapping hands, doing everything. And that's sort of his personality. And Ochai's is really the opposite. You wouldn't have known he scored more than 2 points in this game and kind of gave a half point to the crowd after scoring 29, but that's just who he is. And the thing that stood out to me, Blair, today from Ochai was just his ball handling. And I know part of the reason that he came back to college, part of the feedback he got from the NBA process was just for people to tell him, like, hey, this is part of your game that you need to improve. And even if you're a 3-and-D guy in the NBA, you still have to be able to put it on the ground, be able to dribble some and take the ball to the basket and have some competence on that particular skill. And we haven't seen this from Ochai. There was one play where he got the ball kind of in transition, caught it with two hands, went behind his back on the dribble, and then finished under the basket. And it's not something we've seen from Ochai. So him being able to score, him being able to take it off the bounce, it's never going to be a strength for him, but it's really been a weakness for him up until this point. So for him to show more a complete part of his game in that way, I just thought that was phenomenal. And, his shooting was really good. It was really good last year. It got even better in this particular game, but we'll see if that continues. But it was phenomenal by him, career high in points. And that was an Ochai Agbaji that none of us have seen before. And he won't be at Kansas next year. He'll be in the NBA and arenas like this if he continues to perform like that.
So I was scribbling down some of the Bill Self post-game press conference, and he said this about Ochai. Another step he needs to take to become an elite player, he needs to become an assassin. And he was that tonight. Jay Bilas called him, a first-team All-America player. The praise just flowed on Ochai. I was struck by just how mature he played. He looks the same, but he played with more maturity tonight. That's not to suggest that he can kind of fall back into a timidness later on, or as roles are still being established on this team and Jalen Wilson gets worked back in. And, there's a lot to sort out with these Jayhawks, but man, against this opponent on this stage, for him to have the game that he did, pretty impressive, I thought.
Yeah, I think so too. And I mean, the other thing, Blair, is he took a big step last year, and that's, I think, what people sometimes don't give him credit for. But, if you look at his game-by-game log, and Gary would know this better than me. I'm kind of telling Bill Self here. Gary, you would know this better than me, that sort of thing. But he scored double figures in like 19 of KU's first 20 games or something like that. So when KU really needed him to score last year, he was able to do that. But you want to talk about being an assassin and kind of being aggressive. We saw it very late in the year from Ochai during certain moments, including when he got his career high against Oklahoma with 26 points late in March. But it's just tougher when you can't dribble. It's tougher when you can't take it to the basket. So when you have some confidence in that part of your game and are able to create something like that, then everything sort of opens up. And I think we might have all got it wrong here. I know it's just one game. I know there's going to be other games where the game flow goes differently and all those sorts of things. But yeah, for a night, Bobby Pettiford said this to us, just outside the locker room. He said he told Ochai on the court that he was the best player in the country and he wanted him to get to 30 plus points. He wanted him to close out the game because he'd had such a good game as well. But yeah, I mean, that's what Jay Bilas said. That's what Bill Self said. It's what almost everybody except for Ochai said, which was, for a night here, he really established what he could do for this team and where potentially it could go if he continues this level of progression that he's shown so far.
And Gary, I was also interested in something Remy Martin said after the game. He was just asked about his first half versus second half. And as you mentioned, he didn't even take a shot in the first half, but he was, he was interested in playing off of Agbaji and, letting him have his half. I forgot what Agbaji was at halftime. Was it 12, 14? I can't remember what his points were at the break, but then Remy in the second half, all 15 of his points, the first shot he makes as a Kansas player is about a 28-foot three-pointer. And the ball was in his hands so much toward the end of the game. That's almost like that's Remy Martin's game. And he expects the ball to be in his hands. So what did you think of Remy Martin? And is this the player that we expect him to be?
It was wild how he had two different halves like that. 0 the first, 15 the second. But he had 6 rebounds. I don't know if they just fell right to him or I don't remember them that much. 2 assists. Self-conceded, said that he played well the second half. But I thought he did okay. I mean, he looked like he definitely belonged as a starter at KU. And again, he iced all 4 of his free throws. KU hit 19 of 24, not bad. But I thought he had an okay start. considering that he bounced back the second half to score a lot of points.
Yeah. So, Jesse, how do you think it's going to break down on the floor with Remy and Dejuan Harris? It looks like Bill is pretty comfortable with Harris running the show, but once the ball gets in Remy's hands, especially in the final minutes, it looks like that's Remy time.
Yeah, I don't know when Jalen Wilson comes back what they're going to do for the starting lineup. It'll be fascinating because Bill is really pleased with Dejuan Harris when he's done so far. And you look at it, kind of a quiet stat line, but for a team like Kansas, you can have a quiet stat line and kind of be a guy that can play off others. That's what Dejuan Harris did. 6 points, 4 assists, no turnovers, 3 steals, and knows the plays. Again, that's part of the reason he's that point guard is he probably has a better familiarity with the playbook right now than Remy Martin does. But going to your point, Blair, and Gary mentioned this a little bit before, there got to be a moment down the stretch where, KU really wasn't closing that well. The possessions got a little bit tough, that sort of thing. And those are the games last year when KU really could struggle because they didn't have a guy where, Bill Self has done this over time. I mean, sometimes you can look like a great coach because you spread the floor, you call a ball screen, and then Frank Mason goes and makes a play, or Tyshawn Taylor goes and makes a play, or Sharon Collins goes and makes a play. It's sure nice when the game's on the line if you just have a guy who's got a little bit of wiggle in him and can go to the rim and make you a basket. And so for as much as right now Self and Remy are figuring each other out, and Bill mentioned again after the game how they're still trying to figure each other out, I'll tell you this, Bill was certainly happy that when this game came to closing time, he could get the ball, spread it out, give it to Remy Martin. He got a couple buckets. You don't have to coach it. You don't have to X and O it. You don't have to manufacture it. You just get it. And Bill's going to be really happy to have that down the stretch in these games, as long as Remy Martin's healthy and able to help Kansas in that sort of way. And I think overall, that's probably one of the biggest points of tonight to me, Blair, is just a year ago when everything was so hard offensively and so hard in transition, everything looked so easy with the small lineup for Kansas to get to the lane, to score, to get to the basket, to dish to others, whether it was Bedore, whether it was Harris, whether it was Remy Martin, whether it was Yesufu in his limited minutes, even Christian Brown and Ochai Agbaji, we talked about having a little bit better handle than a year ago. Bill Self remade his roster and went from a team that really couldn't get it to the lane off the bounce to a team that's really difficult to keep out of the lane off the bounce. And so it's a credit to his recruiting and a credit to guys that wanted to sign up and join this. But this is a different team from the past. And they have a bigger margin for error than last year just because they get so many baskets, or they did tonight, in transition. And that really increases the margin of error for you. I mean, Michigan State, they're bemoaning their turnovers. They're bemoaning the steals that Kansas got. And that's just not something that Jayhawks manufactured as much a year ago.
I should mention that I stayed on for the Tom Izzo post-game press conference. He actually mentioned Dejuan Harris, just how impressed with how he ran the team, which was the case for most of the night. And Harris had a nice line with the 6 points and 4 assists. Let's talk about a couple other veterans before we take a break. David McCormack, 10. I think what did he finish with 10 points. It was kind of seemed like a typical David McCormack night, under 500 from the field, struggled a little bit at the free throw line, but had a couple of nice blocks. And it's just, he's just not the smoothest of scorers at the basket, is he, Gary?
No, he started the game kind of like everybody saw last year. He seemed a little rushed again. And a lot of times he gets the ball and you just look and he doesn't have a direct angle to the hoop. So he does a few moves and doesn't usually hit that shot. Like, for example, when Mitch Lightfoot entered the game, somebody fed Mitch the ball. I think it was a freshman. And Mitch grabbed it and he had the angle and he just laid it in. David sometimes is sped up and doesn't seem to, have an easy shot. At least that's the way I see it. But still had some remarkable plays. I think he had a vicious block and I think he had a real hard dunk. But, if he ever gets like Doak Azubuike was, very, very, very comfortable, he still might have a lot to him. I don't think he had a horrific game. He ended up with 10 points, but I don't know if Bill would prefer, 5 guards deep down and have David out of there sometimes, or just battle through with David. But no lack of effort, that's for sure. The guy hustles.
Plus, he had the block that Tom Izzo into a tizzy and got him a technical foul.
Yeah.
In the second half. The other guy I wanted to touch on really quick before we take a break is Christian Braun, who, God, I thought when he launched those threes in the first half and didn't hit anything, I thought, oh no. But he had a really nice stretch in the second half where he got a couple buckets. The rebounding was there again. I think he led KU in rebounds tonight, and overall, I think a positive night for him. You just want to see that perimeter, that deep shot fall for him, and it didn't come close to happening.
Blair, I think you're mentioning this. Self said it after the game where he talked about a couple of the starters didn't perform up to what you expect from them. And frankly, that's McCormack and that's Brown. I mean, those are the two guys where if you look statistically and just kind of watching with your eyes that they didn't have the type of performances that you might expect. But I mean, that's the great news about tonight for Kansas. I mean, they win this one going away. They win this one easily. And last year, if Dave McCormack had a game like that, KU probably lost. You know what I mean? They had to have him play well. And they still need him to play well because if they're going to play that 4-round one, I mean, you saw Michigan State. I'm sure Jay Billis was mentioning this on the broadcast, but they were not doubling Dave McCormack. So it's kind of like Udoka Azubuike back in 2018 when they played the 4 guards around him. You picked your poison. Do you want to double Doak? If you do, you're giving up threes. If you don't want to double him, then the big man has to take advantage inside. And Dave McCormack did not do that as well as he needs to on other nights. But I mean, the fact of the matter is what we're talking about here is, hey, Zach Clemens stepped up, and hey, Bobby Pettiford stepped up, and hey, Jalen Coleman-Lands had some good minutes, and KU went down the line, and it didn't matter that 2 of the starters didn't perform to what they normally do. And if Kansas is going to have that on a given night, where you say, okay, 2 or 3 guys don't necessarily play well, but you figure it out because you can sub in 2 or 3 other guys that can be capable or competent on certain nights. Yeah, that's really positive because I mean, I'm not worried about Christian Braun shooting. He's going to be a good shooter. And I'm not really worried about David McCormack scoring inside, honestly. I mean, I think he was rushed tonight. I think we kind of saw first half David McCormack kind of like last year. So those are things I think will change over time. But what's good for Kansas is that on any given night, if a guy is off, they might have somebody on the bench that could be on, and they can fix some of the problems that they might have had a year ago that would have caused losses and turn those into wins. And even tonight against a pretty good team, Michigan State, a pretty comfortable win.
Okay, let's take a quick break, and we'll come back for a short segment. I want to talk about the rookies, and then Gary will tell us about there was some red shirt news tonight, just roster information from KU. We'll be right back. Hey, it's Blair. We have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns presented on the kansascity.com site, and it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. Your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star, and that support has never been more important. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeatKC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening. Okay, we're back with Jesse Newell and Gary Bedore. We're rehashing the Kansas 87-74 victory over Michigan State in the Champions Classic at Madison Square Garden. I got to tell you guys, I love the Champions Classic. This is the 11th year of the event. It's the same 4 teams every year. They rotate opponents, rotate sites. I think it's a grand way to get into the college basketball season. College basketball tends to just kind of slide in. You don't know when exhibition games stop and the real regular season games begin sometimes, but that's not true with these 4 teams because they get after it in New York or Indianapolis or Chicago or Atlanta, wherever these games are played, and they're really high level. It's interesting. Michigan State's unranked. It's only the second time in the history of the tournament that there's been an unranked team, a team unranked in the preseason poll. The other time was Michigan State in the first one of these in 2011. So high level college basketball. And that was true also of the freshmen, some of the freshmen who played tonight, right, Gary? I thought some very good moments by some first-year Jayhawks.
Yeah, Bobby Pettiford had 5 points, 2 for 2, 2 assists, 2 rebounds. Zach Clemens, 7 points the first half. KJ Adams had he saved the ball from going out of bounds, and I believe he threw it over to Christian Brown for a bucket. And was it a block at the end of the first half?
Yeah, big block at the end of the first half.
That was pretty amazing for a guy that just came in, and he's supposed to be a really good player, maybe underrated nationally in the recruiting rankings, but that was it for the freshman, I believe. Jalen Coleman-Lands, the super senior, was 1 for 5. So 1 for 3 on threes. He was not hot in his KU debut, the former Iowa State. Joseph Yesufu, the transfer from Drake, did not play much. He didn't score, but I know Self is planning on having him in the rotation. But personally, I thought the freshman played well, and I can see why Self says Pettiford looks like he's got a lot of potential to be a very good KU guard.
How about Clemens? Am I pronouncing that right, Jesse? Zach Clemens?
Clemens, yeah.
I want it to be pronounced Clemens, like in Goodfellas, but It's Clemens. Man, 4 minutes, knocks down a 3, gets a couple rebounds, gets a bucket, just did not seem intimidated by the surroundings.
Yeah, it's funny. I talked to both Zach and Bobby after the game, and both shared similar sentiments. They were just so excited to be here. Zach was great. He was mentioning, he's like, hey man, I'm just a Texas kid. I've never been to New York. And then he said after he hit that 3, he said he never felt a feeling like that go through his body before. So it was pretty good stuff. You know, Bobby Pettiford talked about how he's a big Derrick Rose fan. So the Knicks have become his favorite team, so to play in the Garden. But what the big thing about this is for these guys is Bill Self is typically a guy in these games that does not play freshmen. He does not play guys that he doesn't trust. So those guys' leashes in this particular game are super short. I mean, like, you can't get any shorter. And for those guys to go in and not only play well, but play well right off the bat and to gain Bill Self's trust to be able to stick in there and you know, play the minutes that they did and have the impact they did. What's fascinating, the last lead of the game, I'll give it, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's if I'm not mistaken, I think the last lead of the game for Michigan State was around 31-30. And what happened on the end of the court was Bobby Pettiford came around a ball screen. He broke free, and then he scooped the ball over to Zach Clemens, who put in the layup around a guy who was about trying to block it. So, you know, we can talk about Ochai, we can talk about Remy, we can talk about all these other guys and what they did for Kansas, but important moment in the game, or one of the most important moments of the game before they pulled away, was a freshman to a freshman on one of the biggest arenas, one of the biggest stages in the world. So, yeah, that's a positive sign for Kansas. But those guys were super excited, and there's so much talk about the nerves getting to you at the Champions Classic, but those guys seemed pretty hyped, but they also didn't let it affect them. So it was a great night, great performance for them.
Okay, and Gary, how about the news on the Redshirts? There was some news made on that. I guess Bill on his pregame show, and then talked about it later.
Cam Martin, super senior from Missouri Southern, is going to redshirt. Self-stressed that Martin wanted to do it. He's the guy that scored so much at Missouri Southern. He's 6'9", but he can hit threes. And Self had said earlier in the preseason that Cam had not found his shot yet at KU. So losing Lightfoot and David McCormack, he likes the fact that next year he can have Cam Martin go with some of these freshmen that are coming in. Cam Martin might be a good big man next year, you know, if he becomes comfortable with big-time basketball. The year, you know, if he's not going to play much this year since he's not found his shot, next year, you know, maybe as a would it be a 6th-year player? He could have a big year for Bill. So the other red shirt is a walk-on, Dylan Wilhite. I kind of thought he'd redshirt him because he's really got a nice body. He's like 6'9", 250, I think. And he, I don't know if he can play or not, but he had a really good high school career. But he's going to redshirt, so Bill must think he's better than the average walk-on, or why do that. And Kyle Cuff, there are still discussions going on, I guess, is the way Bill said it. Nothing has been decided because you don't have to decide right away. He didn't play tonight, so as long as he doesn't enter a game, he can redshirt. With all the guards KU has, there's just probably not time for Cuff, who should be a high school senior this year. He changed classification to the class of 21, and he's a younger guy who was hurt. He had arthroscopic surgery in September, so it all adds up to not a lot of minutes. But some guys, just don't want to do that because whether they play a lot or not, they don't want to go to college for 5 years instead of 4. So I would assume he would redshirt also, but that is not finalized.
All right, guys, let's call it a night, and we'll continue the KU basketball conversation another time. I certainly want to explore something else that Bill Self said after the game. I thought this was interesting regarding Remy Martin, that, according to Bill, he's used to having the ball in his hands, and I'm trying to get him get the ball out of his hands. I thought that was a really interesting quote that says a lot about how Bill wants to shape a team. And I know you've already written about it a little bit, Jesse, and we'll continue to pursue that story. So, all right. Hey, for Gary Bedore and Jesse Newell, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you again soon. That'll do it for today. Thanks to our SportsBeat KC production staff of Beth Welsh, Monty Davis, Jeff Rosen, and Chris Fickett. Tip of the cap to Gary Bedore and Jesse Newell for talking KU basketball. Links to their stories can be found in the show notes and on kansascity.com. So let's talk about the morning sports edition. If you're not seeing it, you're really missing out. On kansascity.com, go to the Stars e-edition. The e-edition's a replica of the printed newspaper on your screen that comes with your digital subscription. Well, now there's an updated sports section produced separately that goes along with it. When you open the e-edition, there's a box in the upper right-hand corner that says All Editions. Click on that, and you can access anywhere from 15 to 50 pages of sports every day. You can also get it through email. That's how I get it. It's there by 6 a.m. every morning. But however you see it, you know what I'm talking about. It is complete coverage of the previous day's sports news, features, statistics, everything. It's fantastic. Okay, hey, thanks for reading the Star and listening to our podcast lineup. You're helping support the best sports and news coverage in Kansas City, and we couldn't produce programs like SportsBeat KC without you. We'll be back on Thursday with another episode.